فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى.
الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Our dear Hassan Minhaj, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has declared in the Quran a verse with which you are all familiar with. In Surah An-Nahl, which is Surah number, what number? Number 16. Surah An-Nahl, Surah number 16. The surah entitled The Bee. That He sent down this Quran that it might explain all things. Tibyanan likulli shay. Well then, it should explain some of these strange things that I'm about to narrate to you. Islam recognizes a holy land. In Arabic, Al-Ardul Muqaddasa. What is it in Bahasa? Oh no, you know Bahasa. Huh? Tanah Suci. Yes. The Holy Land. Judaism recognizes Holy Land. Christianity recognizes Holy Land. And for all three, the Holy Land is where we have Palestine. Hinduism have a Holy Land. The Holy Land is India, Bharat. And Buddhism also has a concept of a holy place where Gautama Buddha achieved Nirvana. In our Holy Land, we notice that after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given the land to the Israelite people, today they call Jews, He says so in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, that He gave the land to the Jews. Yeah, it's there in the Quran. But strangely, the New York Times does not seem to be interested in telling the world that the Quran declares that the Holy Land was given to the Jews. Yeah? I wonder why. And then a state of Israel was established in the Holy Land. And that state of Israel under the Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam became the ruling state in the world. Yeah. Jerusalem became the political and spiritual capital of the world. And then Allah expelled them from the Holy Land. And the holy state of Israel was destroyed. And the masjid built by Sulaiman alayhi salam was destroyed. And for 2,000 years, the Jews lived in exile. Is this true, what I'm saying? It is? But I want you to listen carefully to what I have to say, because we have a newspaper here today. And we are accustomed of being misrepresented. It is customary now, being misrepresented, not the reporters, the big men out there. And one of these days we're going to be fed up of misrepresentation. And we'll show the truth in their faces and go in front of the newspaper offices with placards. Is this what the man said? Why do you tell lies? Huh? This is not to intimidate our newspaper president. But we just gave a lecture 2 days ago, UBD, the Pope. And you could see what happened when they reported on that lecture. 2,000 years they remained in exile. And after 2,000 years, the Jews have returned to the Holy Land, returned to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own. After 2,000 years, a state of Israel has been restored in the Holy Land. And that state of Israel, born as a baby about 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, steadily growing rapidly in power until today, a former Prime Minister of Israel would say, "We control America." And the United States, of course, is the ruling state in the world. So we ask the question, can all of these be happening by accident? Or is there an explanation in the Quran? Okay? It is when we turn to the Quran to find the explanation that we are brought to the subject of Akhirul Zaman, or the last age. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was sitting with his companions when he came upon his companions who were sitting talking amongst themselves, and he asked, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "We're talking about the signs of the last day." And then he said, and this is in Sahih Bukhari, it is in Sahih Muslim, the last day would not come until, and then he mentioned 10 signs. Who can tell me all 10? Come on. I have a small gathering here today, so I can take my time. I can pause, I can ask questions. I can't do that in a big lecture. Who want to help me? All 10. Yes, go ahead. Number 1? Imam al-Mahdi. No, not in the 10. He gave the time, yes, but not in the 10. Yes, go ahead.
The presence of Dajjal.
Dajjal, number 1. Go ahead, number 2. The return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Correct. Number 3.
The sinking of the earth. The sinking of the earth.
3. You have to say 3. Sinking of the earth. The earth opens and swallows what it swallows. Earthquakes. 1 in Bandar Seri Begawan. Where are they?
On the east.
1 in the east.
West.
1 in the west.
And 1 in the Middle East.
1 in?
In the Middle East.
You only get 5 marks for that. One in the east, one in the west, and one in? Come on, Minhaj, tell him the third one.
I think it's the Gulf.
I think it's sophisticated guesswork. Huh? One in the east, one in the west, and one in Arabia. Arabia. Okay, so we had Dajjal, we had the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, we had the three thinkings of the, that's five? The five more? Huh? The sun will rise from the west. That's six. Four more. No, don't check it now. No. Put your machines away. Yeah? Gog and Magog. Seven. Three more. Three more. Huh?
Monster came out.
What?
A monster came out from
Monster came out
somewhere.
from somewhere. Dabbatul Ard. Beast of the earth. Two more.
The ayah in the Quran disappears.
The eye of the Quran
Disappears.
disappeared. No.
Smoke coming from his.
Allah is protecting the Quran. Allah is protecting the Quran. Divinely protected. Two more. We had Dajjal. We had the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. We had the three Usuf, one in the east, one in the west, one in Arabia. That's five. We had Gog and Magog, that's six. We had the sun rising from the west, that's seven. And we had Dabbatul Ard, that's eight. We need two more. Yeah. Two more.
The Arabian desert become Greenland.
Not in the 10. Smoke, Dukhan. Dukhan, smoke. One more.
Fire.
Fire. From? A fire will come out of Barbados.
Of the earth.
A fire will come out of Babylon. A fire will come out of Yemen is correct. Yemen. And drive people to their place of assembly for judgment. There you are. The 10. Among these 10 are Gog and Magog. Okay? Alright. Now, we go to the Quran to find out, does the Quran explain the return of the Jews to Jerusalem 2,000 years after they were expelled, and the restoration of the state of Israel in the Holy Land 2,000 years after it was destroyed? Okay? There is a certain methodology for studying the Quran that I explained in my lecture at the Cove. All those who were present for that lecture, put your hands up. 2 days ago. 2 days ago. Oh, not everybody. Okay. That methodology, and was it the Brunei Times that gave the nice report? Yeah, the Brunei Times. Yes. The reporter from Brunei Times actually remained for the whole lecture. Therefore, he could give a report on the lecture. The methodology for the study of the Quran is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the beginning of the Quran. Now listen carefully because you've got to teach the subject. At the beginning of the Quran, Allah speaks and He says that He gave an order to the angels, the malaika, to bow down, make prostration, sajda, before Adam alayhi salam. فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسِ. And elsewhere in the Quran, Jamia, they all made sajda except Iblis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not deficient in the use of language. No. So this statement is deliberately constructed this way for a purpose. فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسِ. Allah wants to teach a lesson. Every university student better learn that lesson. The lesson is this. If you study this verse by itself, alone, Americans say stand alone, then you have to come to the conclusion, logical conclusion, that since the order was given to the angels and they all obeyed except one, Iblis, implication is Iblis was an angel. Iblis was an angel. You can't get away from that. That is, if you use this wrong methodology of studying a verse of the Quran or a hadith by itself, alone, stand alone, then you can come to a conclusion which can be wrong. Is Iblis an angel? You would not know that unless you go to the rest of the Quran. If you stay with this verse alone, Iblis has to be an angel. Oh yes. But if you take the Quran as a whole, lazy people don't want to do that. No, you have fast food now. Fast food. You have all kinds of fastings now. So they want fast knowledge too. They don't want to do their homework. Go to the whole Quran. And when you study the whole Quran that is relevant to this topic, then you'll get the answer. And when we go to the rest of the Quran, we very quickly find out, oh no, Iblis could not have been an angel. Why? Because elsewhere in the Quran Allah says, وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, and the angels obey Allah. Whatever they are commanded, they obey. Angels cannot disobey. No. So if this fella disobeyed, he couldn't be an angel. See? But you would not have known that unless you had studied the Quran as a whole. And then when we went to Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran, Allah now says it plainly and clearly, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. Iblis was a jinn. And so from this lesson taught at the very beginning of the Quran, you know, you got homework to do. When you want to study any verse of the Quran, you got homework to do. Don't be lazy. You could make mistakes and then you'll be very embarrassed. What you have to do is to get all the verses of the Quran which pertain to that particular subject. Let's call it the data. And when you've got all the data from the Quran on that subject, then you have to try to bring them together as a harmonious whole. It is as though you have pearls. What's the bahasa for pearl? Mutiara? Mutiara, oh yes, beautiful word. Mutiara. And you have to put these mutiara to make a necklace. What is necklace? Rantai. Rantai. You have the mutiara and you got to make it into a rantai. Good? So all the verses of the Quran are the mutiara. And your job, and that's not easy, eh? Oh no. Your job is to take all of these mutiara and make it into a rantai, an organic whole, harmonious whole. In the case of mutiara, you need a string, okay? And you pass it through the string. In the case of the Quran, my teacher said, Rahimahullah, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadl Rahman Ansari, in his book, who knows the book? Oh, I just introduced the book 2 days ago. The Quranic Foundations and Structure of Muslim Society, 2 volumes. And I said, volume 2, very nice, very nice. For volume 1, I said you must buy a bottle of Tylenol, headache tablets. Volume 1, not easy. That book, we don't have chalk for that book, so it cannot go on sale yet. But if you order it from KL, and we can send it to you by mail, I'm sure you'll get it in the mail. Alright, so what you can do is take my email address, send me an email, and we can send it to you by mail, inshallah. Excuse me. My teacher in this book says that the rantai, the string that you need to make the rantai, he calls that the system of meaning of the subject. And when you have penetrated the system of meaning of the subject, then you can take the mutiara and make the rantai. When you've done that, only then, not before, only then will you open the books of hadith. Not before. Quran first, then hadith. And when you open the books of hadith, all those ahadith, the mutiara in the hadith, which can go into the rantai, can absorb. So your rantai will become bigger now, because it's all harmonious, they can fit into the rantai. And when you locate a hadith which cannot get into the rantai, that is the hadith you're going to put aside. Put this aside. You will not deal with that hadith. That hadith, for example, could be fabricated. It could be a hadith which is in conflict with the Quran. But you don't handle that. You leave that to the scholars. Let them handle that. In your case, you will simply put it aside quietly. If it cannot fit into the rantai, that's it. So this is the methodology for the study of the Quran. Not difficult, is it? To understand the methodology. It's just that some people are too lazy to do their homework. Yeah. So now we go to the Quran to try to find an explanation that will explain these people being expelled from Jerusalem and living for 2,000 years in exile. And then after 2,000 years, they are brought back to reclaim Jerusalem as the Holy Land, as their own. What is the explanation in the Quran? In Surah Al-Anbiya, we don't have the time to go to all the mutiara. No, we don't have that time. In Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah number 21, entitled The Prophets, verses 94 and 95, I believe, or maybe 95 or 96. Allah speaks and He says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وحرام على قرية أهلكناها أنهم لا يرجعون. He is speaking about a qarya or a town. It is a town which He destroyed. أهلكناها. And having destroyed that town, the people of the town were expelled. And then Allah placed a ban on them that they could never return to that town to reclaim it as their own. وَحَرَامٌ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ. Which town is it? They can never return to reclaim it as their own. Which town is it? The next verse goes on to say, Hatta, they will return to reclaim it as their own. When? إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ. When Gog and Magog are released. Futihat, open, released. And now later on in the lecture we'll find where Gog and Magog were placed behind a barrier and they could not get out. They were blocked. So when Gog and Magog are released from behind the barrier, إِذَا فُتِحَتْ يَأْجُوجُ وَمَأْجُوجُ وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ. Two things. Number one, when they are released from behind the barrier, and number two, when they spread out in all directions, or they descend from every height. Then you will find these people being brought back to the town to reclaim it as their own. So when you see these people brought back to the town to reclaim it as their own, you know you're living in Akhirul Zaman. And you know that those who have brought them back to the town are Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog. Who are Gog and Magog? Are they some strange creatures living in the interior of the earth? Huh? Are there some strange human beings with 24 ears, 24 ears and 3 noses? What are they? Gog and Magog. Huh? You get a very interesting answer when you go to some of the books and read the books. In fact, you might start to laugh. The Prophet said, Sallallahu Ta'ala Alayhi Wa Sallam, and now we turn to the hadith just to clarify, not to add anything, just to clarify. Hadith is in Sahih Muslim. He said that Ya'juj or Gog is an ummah of Banu Adam, so human beings. And Ma'juj is an ummah of Banu Adam, so human beings. That disposes of all these strange creatures living in the interior of the earth. Question. Which town is it that Allah is speaking of in Surah Al-Anbiya? Now, it's very easy for everybody to understand and recognize which town it is. But it wasn't easy 1,000 years ago, 1400 years ago, when the books of Tafsir were written. So you will find the Mufassirun making a guess. Maybe it is this town, maybe it is that town, maybe it is that town, and saying Allah knows best. You couldn't expect them at that time to understand and grasp what we can so easily grasp now. Which town is it? But let us return to our methodology. In order to identify the town, we have to go to the whole Quran to see where Allah speaks about bringing a people back. Bringing a people back to where they were. There is one such verse, and it is at the end of Surah Al-Isra. Surah number 17. You got homework to do, eh? Surah number 17. Surah Al-Isra. If you knew this Quran the way you know these machines that you are, tick-tack, tick-tack, toe, be good for you, eh? At the end of Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about Banu Israel all through the surah. In fact, although it is not well known, this surah also has another name. Most people know it as Surah Al-Isra. Very few people know that it is also called Surah Bani Israel. Oh, panas? Oh, water. Okay, fine. Panas.
Yes.
At the end of the surah, Allah speaks about Akhiru Zaman. And He says, فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ جِئْنَا بِكُمْ لَطِيفًا. That when the countdown, the last countdown is coming to an end, we're going to bring you back. We're going to bring you back. And when you are brought back, you will be like a mingled crowd. You're not all the same anymore. For example, some of you will have a Yemeni stomach for Yemeni food, and others will have an Iranian stomach for Iranian food, and you'll be speaking Iranian language, you're speaking Yemeni Arabic. and others will have a Moroccan stomach, and others will have a Russian stomach, and speaking Yiddish, and some will have a Chinese stomach. Jitna bikum lafifa. So Allah does speak in the Quran about bringing a people back, and the context of the surah makes it clear that he's speaking about the Israelite people. So here is the Quran clearly pointing to Banu Israel as the people who will be brought back. Brought back meaning brought back to their town. Now then, when we leave the Quran and we go to the Hadith now, from Mutiyara in the Hadith, we're looking now in there are many Hadiths on Gog and Magog, and we want to find whether there's any Hadith on Gog and Magog which links them to a town. So we can identify the town. When we go through all the Hadiths on Gog and Magog, we find that there is only one town mentioned, only one, that is linked to Gog and Magog, and it is Jerusalem. You won't find the word Jerusalem in the Quran. You won't find the word Jerusalem in the Hadith, because we don't use the word Jerusalem. We use the word Baitul Maqdis. That's our name, Baitul Maqdis, not Jerusalem. And now we have a new name, we call it Al-Quds. So other people call it Jerusalem, we call it Baitul Maqdis. And in the Hadith, Gog and Magog are going to Baitul Maqdis. So on the basis of this verse of the Quran and this Hadith, we come to the conclusion that when Allah spoke in the Quran, in Surah Al-Anbiya, about a town which was destroyed, the people were expelled. A ban was placed on them that they could never return to reclaim that town as their own, until Gog and Magog are released and is spread out in all directions. Allah was speaking about Jerusalem. And so now at least we have an explanation, because we began by asking the question. Here is a very important event which has occurred. That the Jews have come back to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem, to reclaim it as their own 2,000 years after they were expelled. And we want an explanation. Now we have an explanation. That Gog and Magog have brought them back. If you say we are wrong, you must tell us what is right. That's only fair, isn't it? Don't open your mouth, as the Salafis are very fond of doing. Sometimes they put their foot in their mouth. I'm so sad to speak like this, because that's exactly what they've been doing. They just cannot leave me alone. No. As though I'm a Red Bull. Anytime Imran Hosein opens his mouth, Salafis have to jump. I don't know what's wrong with that. If I criticize, I do so in an academic way, scholarly way, with no disrespect intended, not at all. But when they respond, they respond with all the cannons firing. Allah is speaking about Jerusalem and saying that Gog and Magog have brought the Jews back to the Holy Land. That's our explanation. If you say we are wrong, you must tell us what is right. You must go to the Quran and you must locate in the Quran the explanation and then present it, which explains this phenomenon of the Jews being brought back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own 2,000 years after they were expelled. To this day they have not done that. No. Nobody has done that. No one. To locate another explanation from the Quran. But all that they can do is to beat the drum and say Imran Hosein is wrong, Imran Hosein is wrong, Imran Hosein is wrong. Sounds foolish now. Why? Because more and more people who have intelligence are recognizing that this is correct. And so while you keep on beating your drums, you're looking more and more foolish. Yes. If Gog and Magog have brought them back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own, and if Gog and Magog are human beings, can we identify them? Who are those who have brought the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own? Can we identify them? Well, at the end of the second verse in Surah Al-Anbiya, we are told, وَهُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ حَدَبٍ يَنْسِلُونَ, that they spread out in all directions, or they descend from every height. In Sahih Muslim, we are told something more. It is a Hadith al-Qudsi. Do we have any copies of Gog and Magog? No, we don't have any copies. Okay. Sorry about that. We have, I just brought out a second edition of the book. About 3-4 weeks ago. But that is in KL. So again, you're going to have to order it from KL and we can ship it to you now. In Sahih Muslim, Hadith al-Qudsi, Allah says about Gog and Magog, I have created creatures of mine so powerful that none but I can fight them and destroy them. Only I can do it, nobody else can do it. Meaning that Gog and Magog have an indestructible power. So when they are released into the world from behind the barrier that I spoke about earlier, something new is going to happen in history. Something that never happened before in history. A new force is going to emerge in history. A people who are going to come, and with their power they will take control of the world. They will spread out in all directions. And by spreading out in all directions, they'll impose their rule over the whole world. These are the people who are going to bring Gog and Magog back. Bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. Who are these people? We leave that question, that very fascinating question. Who are these people? To now go from Surah Al-Anbiya to Surah Al-Kahf. Surah number 18. 18. You do answer correctly, no Tetarik at the end. Surah number 18. And in Surah number 18, Surah Al-Kahf, Allah speaks about Dhul Qarnayn. وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. And they question thee about Dhul Qarnayn. قُلْ سَأَتْلُ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. I'm going to tell you something of his story. إِنَّا مَكَّنَّا لَهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَآتَيْنَاهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ سَبَبًا. I gave to him, or we gave to him, the power to pursue any goal he chose to pursue. So, you're talking about a superpower, eh? This is the superpower in the world, because he has the power to pursue whatever goal he chose to pursue. فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا. So he decided to pursue a particular goal. And he traveled to the west. And then he traveled for a second time to the east. And then he traveled a third time. And when he traveled the third time, he came across a people whose language could not be understood. When they were able to communicate with each other, they then said to him, because he's got the power, O Dhul Qarnayn, we got a problem. Gog and Magog are very wicked people, and they are destructive. They corrupt and destroy, and we need help, and we're prepared to pay you. Can you build a barrier to block them? And he built the barrier, and they were blocked. I wonder in which direction was the third journey. The first was to the west, the second was to the east, and the third was in which direction? I wonder where this barrier was. Behind the barrier are Gog and Magog. Is it in Borneo? Is it? Where is this barrier? Now comes the fascinating part. Another hadith tells us that when Allah brings down the barrier in Akhirul Zaman and Gog and Magog are released, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee on their way to Jerusalem. And they start to drink the water. And by the time the last of them pass the Sea of Galilee on their way to Jerusalem, they say there used to be water here. We come back to the Sea of Galilee in a moment. If you are traveling to Jerusalem and you pass the Sea of Galilee on your way to Jerusalem, the implication is you're traveling coming from the north. Because the Sea of Galilee is north of Jerusalem. Okay? So now, we're getting somewhere. We're looking for a barrier somewhere north of Jerusalem, past the Sea of Galilee. Where is it? We have some more clues. When Dhul Qarnayn traveled to the west, the first journey, he traveled until he came to a place where the sun was setting in a body of water, meaning The sun was not going down in the water, you dum-dum. I mean, the sun was setting beyond that water. And the water is described as hamia, dark, murky water. So now, let's check out. Is there any body of water north of the Holy Land? North of the Holy Land. Is there any body of water which is dark and murky and which is to the west? To the west of the Holy Land. No, we don't want that now. Right, there we are. To the west of the Holy Land. So the Holy Land here. Sea of Galilee is somewhere here. It's clear there are only two bodies of water. Only two. One is the Mediterranean Sea and the other is the Black Sea. Only two. So we examine the Mediterranean Sea. We send Minhaj on a ship and examine the water, and Minhaj come back to say, water is clear. You can see a few meters down in the Mediterranean Sea. So we say, okay Minhaj, we're going to make another trip now. And we send him to the Black Sea. Where is it here? And when Minhaj got on board the boat, the Black Sea, you could hardly see 1 meter down. It is hamia. It is dark, it is murky, and that's why it is called the Black Sea. You don't need a PhD. Huh? You don't need a PhD to recognize that when Zulkarnain traveled to the west and reached to the body of water, it was the Black Sea. Okay? And then when he traveled to the east, if the Black Sea is on the left, to the west, and if you travel to the right, do we have a picture? Yes, you reach the Caspian Sea on the right side, on the east. So Zulkarnain is between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. If he is traveling between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, one to the west and one to the east, and then he travels to a third direction, when he traveled to the third direction, he came upon a pass between two mountain ranges. So it has to be the Caucasus Mountains. There they are, the Caucasus Mountains, between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea are the Caucasus Mountains. Do we have any other map? That's all the only one we have. Okay. So when you go home, go to Google Earth and type in Black Sea, type in Caspian Sea, type in Caucasus Mountains, and you'll see the actual photograph. Okay? When he traveled in the third direction, therefore, he had to be traveling north. North. Because when he traveled on the third direction, he came across a pass between two mountain ranges. And those two mountain ranges will have to be the Caucasus Mountains. And there he came across a people whose language could not be understood, indicating that they spoke a language which had no connection with the regional languages. It was an isolated language, completely different from all the languages in that region. Can you recognize that language today? Yes. The Georgian language, which is spoken there in Georgia. Georgia is south of the Caucasus Mountains. That Georgian language is completely different from all the other languages in that region. So the evidence is mounting continuously that we are on the right path. Okay? Good. So he built the barrier. What did he use to build the barrier? Was it recycled paper? Or was it bamboo? No. He said, Atini zubar al-hadid, bring me blocks of iron. So that has to be an area where there are iron ore deposits. That is precisely what you find in that area. Iron ore, O-R-E, the raw iron, it abounds in that region. He said, blow with your bellows and make a smelter. Okay. And then when he had used the iron blocks and blocked the pass between the two mountain ranges, he then poured molten lead on the iron blocks. And the engineers, we have any engineer here? No engineer? The engineer tells us it prevents rust. The molten copper prevents the iron from rusting. Okay. So now we have the location. The Gog and Magog are human beings, and they were located north of the Caucasus Mountains. And that pass, in my book you see the photographs of the pass. It's called the Dariel Gorge. Who are they? This tribe of people who have this power and who will be linked with the Holy Land. From that part of the world, you will see them moving to the Holy Land to take control of the Holy Land and then to bring the Israelite people back to the Holy Land. From north of the Caucasus Mountains. Do we know who they were? The question, remember, was who are these who have brought the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own? That's the question. When we conduct our research, we find something very interesting. And that is that there was a tribe of people who lived in that region, north of the Caucasus Mountains, who converted to Judaism, who converted and became Jews. So these are not Banu Israel. No. These are not from the seed of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam to Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam. These are not Banu Israel. These are Eastern European people who converted and became Jews. So, European Jews. And the name of the tribe was the Khazar, Khazar, or Khazar. Khazar. You can do a Google search now